Never seen a lame man walk. Never heard a dumb man talk. Never seen a blind man see. I promise you will change his name. Never seen a canceled death. Never seen all the poor get fed. Never seen a prisoner set free. I promise you will change his name. Broken heart made whole. Never seen an orphan find a home. Never seen the weak find the strength. I promise you will change his name. Never seen the sick get healed. Never seen a mystery revealed. Never seen a death man.
All right, everybody, it's time once again for the Big C and Bigger T podcast. We got past Sweet 16 last week. We're on to Sweet 17, baby.
We're still in the teenage angsty years, but we're
right. There. We got our driver's license, but now we're just probably mad and angry at our parents about something right now.
For no reason whatsoever.
That's right.
Bad.
And we're kind of worried about our future probably a little bit because you're going to get senioritis coming up pretty soon.
Yeah. Now, if you're watching this on the YouTubes, you probably notice we have a guest with us.
We do have a special guest with us, and once again, hopefully, if you're watching on YouTube, you see that. Want to thank everybody that's listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Clint, we went over 100 downloads, by the way.
Yeah, we're big time.
So
we're making
big
that
time
stupid podcast money now.
That's right. But Clint, why don't you introduce us to our very special guest this week?
It is a pleasure to have with us this week. The man has worked tirelessly over 4th of July holiday with a fireworks stand for his program, the Central Baptist College Mustang Wrestling Team. So the head wrestling coach is CBC, Coach Ken Profit. Coach Profit, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, guys, the honor is mine. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm going to thank you so much because one of the guys you recruited many years ago, Francisco Joseph, he has changed my life for the better. It's been a pleasure knowing and meeting with him. The type of guy Cisco is, because everybody calls him Cisco.
Mm-hmm.
Type guy Cisco is, I'd worked out a little bit with Coach Akuda, Peter, and Josh up there. And I think Josh and Peter realized, like, hey, I'm not the body type for this old man to train with. And so Cisco didn't have to. He called me out of the blue one day. He said, hey, I was talking to Johnny and Peter, and he's like, and we started. I went over there, wrestled with him. He about killed me. It is hot. But, Coach, now that being said, Travis, you got a question for Profit that maybe you a little bit easier?
Yeah. First of all, Coach, once again, thank you. This is our first time meeting here on the Magic Zoom world and podcast world here, but I do thank you for being here. Be sure you don't bring up Clint's name at CBC. He had a cup of coffee there, and
it didn't go well.
They wanted to run him off. I think it didn't go well, so don't mention his name there. But seriously, Coach, how long have you been at CBC?
Oh man, so I'm going into I'm in 11 years. 11 years since I wrestling program. We're going into our 11th season. I started the program. I got hired back in April of 2010 and moved here to Conway officially May 9th of 2010.
So tell us a little bit about you. Where you from? How you got into wrestling? And what kind of brought you to Conway?
Born in Miami, Florida, raised in West Palm Beach, Florida. I actually didn't know anything about wrestling or picked up wrestling until I was in the 6th grade. An announcement came out over the PA about intramural wrestling, and like any other kid from the South, when you hear wrestling, the first thing you think about is WWF at the time, now WWE. So that's kind of what I was going through my head. I'm like, oh man, wrestling, all right, I'm interested in that. But it was, had to get it crack of dawn, 6 o'clock practice. and our middle school was at least a good 10 miles away. I was walking that distance to get to practice. So I'm up by 3 o'clock in the morning starting to walk to practice. Of course, the very first practice I walk into it, and this is, short white guy with glasses and a hunchback. I always saw him in the cafeteria. And he ended up being my wrestling coach. He was our athletic director for the middle school, but he was also the high school coach at the high school level. So his name is Mike Chesnes, and he coached me literally from 6th grade until 12th grade. So that's when I started wrestling. And, first day of doing it, it was weird, but I enjoyed it. I loved it and stuck with it. So wrestled all through the intramural sports from 6th to 8th, and then 9th grade year, I was on the JV in high school because the varsity guy was a state champ, and there was no way I was going to beat him. And going into my sophomore year, I stepped into the ranks of the #1 guy. Ended up being a 2-time placer, undefeated state champ my senior year. Got recruited to wrestle at Ellsworth Community College up in Iowa Falls, Iowa. Didn't have the strongest grades, so I started off at a JUCO. Was an All-American there for them. Wrestled 2 years there, and I got recruited and transferred to University of Cumberland out of Kentucky, Southeast Kentucky, and was national qualifier for them. And that's also where I also got career-ending injury, and that's kind of started my path into coaching. Because once I got into my retro senior year, our coach at the time asked me, because I was all set to graduate, go on, got accepted to next medical school and everything. So. But after my injury, the drive to continue my education kind of fell down a little bit. And he basically said, listen, you got to accept the med school once. You get accepted again. Won't you go ahead and work on your master's, help me out, and we'll pay basically get your master's. And that first year being a GA, that's when I fell in love with coaching. And that's when I was like, yeah, you know what, maybe this is the path for me. So at GA, loved coaching. Stuck with it, and then 3 years after getting 3 years into getting my master's, I saw that CBC was reaching out saying they're gonna start a wrestling program. They was moving from the National Christian Collegiate League to the NAIA league. They were bringing in men's wrestling and women's golf, and so I applied, got hired, and as they say, it's all done from there. Took off from there.
That's great.
The question I was going to ask you before I pass to Travis there is obviously the issues that I talked about earlier. This is maybe an issue of being a wrestling coach is man, I've been in the wrestling room when guys are getting ready for competition and stuff. And if you walk in there, your heavyweights are what, 285?
285, yeah.
And the smallest guy you have is what, 125-ish?
5 pounds, yes, sir.
Now, I'm not a mathematician because I did go to Greenbrier High School and Arkansas Tech University, but that's a pretty big weight discrepancy.
It is.
What are the challenges in coaching so many different body types? I mean, you got your guys like Cisco, who's a heavyweight but can move at a heavyweight, and then you got your guys like Chemo, Peter, that are smaller guys.
Right. Well, the trick is it comes down to knowing your athletes. You know that lightweights, middleweights, heavyweights, their movements and their body dynamics are different. So as a coach, it's really my job to pay attention in detail as to what they can do well and what they need help on. When it comes to lightweights, and I'm a heavyweight coach, obviously, but I've been I know the sport of wrestling well enough to know and look at a lightweight and say, all right, there's some things you're doing that you need to fix. If that's not going to work. But again, that's why you have, and then as a head coach, and any head coach that does not say this is not a good head coach. But every head coach know that your program is only as strong as the assistants around you. Your assistant coach makes the program. And Peter has done a tremendous job because I coached Peter from his freshman year all the way till he graduated with me. And then right when he graduated, he came in as a graduate assistant, and now he's my head assistant coach. But he knows my style. He knows, how to teach, what to teach. And of course, he comes in with his own little flavor of how to do things because he studied the sport of wrestling. He's mastered the sport of wrestling. So knowing that I have the assistants around me, that I don't have to necessarily, show all the lightweights and middleweights how to do things, but I can, be around the heavyweights and show them how to do things. And even having an assistant coach or having help like Cisco still come in and roll around with the young bucks, and allowing old Bruce like me to sit back and just kind of be a verbal communicator helps. But it really takes a keen eye to you got to love the sport to know the ins and outs of every individual, because that's what it really comes down to. I'm not just paying attention to my lightweights, middleweights. I'm paying every individual on the team has their own way of doing things, and it's my job to know what they do well, what they don't do well, and how to fix it. And if I'm not paying attention to every individual, somebody's going to fall through the cracks, and you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Now, you said you came into CBC around 2010, correct?
Yeah.
Now, Clint and I have been in Arkansas. Well, he lived in North Carolina for a while and other places, but I've been in Arkansas my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
When you got here to coach wrestling, everyone called it wrestling. It was kind of like you talked about when you were in sixth grade, and there wasn't a lot of knowledge on what the sport was like, and it's talk about how it's changed, maybe some of the struggles you faced and how it's changed in those 11 years or so.
So when I first got here, the sport of wrestling on the high school level was only in going into its second year as a section sport in the high school level. CBC and Ouachita Baptist, OBU, we were the first collegiate programs to have wrestling in the state of Arkansas. We both started the same year. When it came to recruiting, I did not recruit in state at all. The main reason was because wrestlers in the state of Arkansas was just too green. They weren't knowledgeable yet. It wasn't the wrestlers' fault. It was just the fact that there was no history in the sport of wrestling, meaning that the coaches were football coaches or a volunteer coach that might have seen some wrestling back in the day, so they want the extra, $2,000 or $2,500 that it costs to be a high school coach and just be a sponsor. That's basically what being a sponsor. So the kids were, I remember the very first high school tournament I went to and watched here in the state of Arkansas. It was probably the state tournament, and everybody was doing the head and arm. I couldn't take it. It was first base was off, and not only that, the kids were not fitting into their weight classes, meaning that you had guys that were probably 30, 40 pounds above a weight class they should be wrestling. They looked like Pillsbury Doughboys. It was just the lack of knowledge, the lack of education. But over the years, over time now, that's changed. And what has really changed is, going into our third, fourth season, then we started bringing in some, in-state kids. They weren't really lasting, but they were in long enough to pick up some kind of training to say, oh, you know what, college wrestling is not for me, graduate and go back to their high school, go back home. But then now you have them graduating college, going back to their high school with a little bit of education. And you have, you have some parents that are taking the sport a little more serious. They're sending their kids out of state to get some training during the summer. Pat Smith, had my hats off with Pat Smith. He does a great job with his academy. And, kids that go through the academy are starting to get educated. So you're starting to see the change in skill level. You're starting to see the physical change in their bodies. That means they're taking the weight room seriously. They're starting to wrestle year round. They're kind of doing the things necessary for a college kid to be successful outside of. That's what it really came to. It really came to, it wasn't just about being the Arkansas state champ. It's about, okay, I want to be a national All-American. I want to be a Fargo state. I want to be an Adidas state champ. I want to be, Virginia Beach national champ. And I kept saying state, but national champ. Fargo is a national. Yeah. Adidas is a national tournament. So bluebirds going out to different states, going out different places, and now getting that experience and coming back home and understanding, okay, if I really want to get to the college level, I need to be here.
Yeah.
Parents are starting to understand that.
Yeah.
And understanding that not wrestling is a year-round thing. It's not just a seasonal thing.
Yeah.
So you're starting to see that happening in the high school level. We're not, Arkansas is not there yet, but it's much more far along than it was.
I lived out in North Carolina for a period of years, and when I was out there, of course, I trained jiu-jitsu like I always have. And there was a guy I moved in, name was Casey. He was a junior college All-American, and he went to the state tournament in North Carolina. Coach Snyder's my head trainer out there, Steve Snyder's son Devin. He won the state championship working with him. I think his name's Casey. I'm brain farting on that. But he said, looking at the state tournament, he goes, there's guys out there winning state championships in North Carolina that wouldn't have made varsity in Iowa.
Yes.
He said they wouldn't have been a varsity wrestler. Like, they're winning the state there. I remember North Carolina State, I believe, is like a top 5 national program. Are pretty high up there. I remember Devin talked to the guy about walking on, and they pretty much said, look, man, if we wanted to recruit you, we'd recruited you 3 years ago. We're not, they basically said, we're not even interested. What's it going to take for Arkansas to take a big step like that to where we're considered, you're probably never going to be Oklahoma or Iowa, any of those wrestling hotbeds.
This what it is. And it's funny that you're saying that, because my assistant coach, our recruiting coordinator this past year, Coach K. Ralph Cater, we have not talked about this. The difference between a state like Iowa and a state like North Carolina, of course, like Arkansas, is wrestling is embedded, deep-rooted in that state of Iowa. Wrestling, you have your Dan Gables, you have your Kelly Sanders, but you have, the Cooper family, the Brad family. You have different families, generations. 5th generation, 6th generation, 7th generation wrestlers.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. That was my wife.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, bye.
Hey, he's not seeing you. Y'all just smooched on the internet.
So it's embedded. It's deep rooted in the state in Iowa, because they've been having wrestling since you can go down in the history books to 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so you hear about his great uncle wrestled, or his uncle, his brother, his uncle, father, his brothers, all his brothers wrestled.
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to take to get there in the state of Arkansas, because the foundation is already set. The high school level is growing, and now in the college level, you have every level from junior college to Division I in the state of Arkansas now. So the collegiate level is there. The high school level is getting better. So now it's just going to take the high school kids to get into the college level, to be successful in the college level, to come back home after college and start embedding that into their high schools. And then they're having kids, and then they're end up being grandparents who their grandkids are starting to wrestle. And it's just starting, the generation after generation is forming. So it's a process, you know what I'm saying? So, wrestling, I honestly don't see the way wrestling is right now in 2021 in the state of Arkansas. Give it another 10 years in 2031, it's going to be huge. It's going to be different, but it's going to be because that 10th generation of wrestlers now have come back and they're implemented into their kids, and that's what it's going to take. So it's a process, and it's going to get there because, again, every level of the college level is there. So there's no excuse for a high school kid not to be successful or not to go in the college level.
Yeah.
They just have to first.
Yeah. So how many college programs are in the state of Arkansas right now? I know there's y'all, Line, OBU, and Little Rock that I know of off the top of my head.
Yeah. So you have William Baptist, you have Arkansas Baptist, you have University of the Ozarks, You have Little Rock, which is Division One. Washita Baptist Division III. We're NAIA, so NAIA wise, there's 3 of us: Lyon College, William Baptist, and us. In Division II level, you have Washita Baptist. Division III level, you have University of the Ozarks. And Division I level, you have Euler. So, that's what, 7 schools.
Yeah.
So,
And like you said, with anything, it's going to take time. It's also going to take money. It's going to take schools putting that money toward practice facilities for it. All those kind of things.
It takes that, and then the sport of wrestling, especially when it comes to the South, because this is what we experience in Florida. As big as Florida is, you don't see how big wrestling is in the state of Florida unless you're actually in the sport. Yeah. And once you're in the sport, you actually see like, oh man, people wrestle. Yeah. I mean, high school wrestling. It can be that. Same thing in Texas. Football overshadows the wrestling in Texas, but Texas is a pretty tough state for wrestling.
Yeah. Well, so our last question here, Coach. We're Clint and I, of course, grew up. We were football guys. We were big guys. Yes. You big guy, you throw them on the football field. Right. But as a football guy, man, I look at wrestling and I see, man, if I was a coach, I would want every one of my linemen and linebackers or any players, to be honest with you, because I mean, football is so much about leverage. I would make wrestling a part of my off-season program. Like when we were growing up, track was part of the off-season program because the football coach was the track coach also. So pretty much if you either did your off-season football was you did track because we were in a small school. Greenbrier was just 2A at the time. So talk about maybe how wrestling can help in some of these other sports. I know football is an obvious one, but I think in any sport, I mean, in basketball, you use leverage all the time.
Right. Well, I can tell you like this. I'm not sure if you recall, I don't know if it was this past year or the year prior when they came out. I don't think it was it Iowa football college football team. One of their football teams, their whole entire offensive line were high school state champions in wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow!
Yeah, somebody kind of put that as a meme. The sport of wrestling. If you when you talk about balance, agility, coordination, that's what wrestling does. You're using body parts, and your body is the equipment, the tool, and the necessity that you need. So to know your balance, to know your limitations, to exceed your limitations in your body. When you think about a sport like football, having that balance, having that coordination, being able to, connect with somebody and keeping your feet at the same time, holding your weight and having to deal with somebody else's weight. That's what wrestling does, So it would behoove any high school football coach to, push their athletes to do the sport of wrestling, because it's, and the thing about it is that's been a tug of war for years. And I think here lately, son, let me stop. I have a toddler and an infant.
Yeah, I know that.
I want a snack up there.
Okay, give me a minute. I apologize.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I've got a couple kids. Travis ain't found that lucky lady yet. That's right. But he will one of these days.
That's right.
So the sport of wrestling it actually adds to those qualities that you're looking for in an athlete that plays football or that runs track. Certain sports complement each other, and sport like wrestling, football, it complements football. A sport like gymnastics actually complements wrestling. We don't realize that, but that's what it comes down to is being able to understand how it benefits the athlete. And I think my honest opinion is any high school and every high school kid should try to play every sport they can.
That's right.
They want to play they want to play football in the fall, and then in the winter they're wrestling, and in the spring they're playing baseball. Or I say go for it. I mean, you're in high school, go do it all. And eventually, as you get older, get to your junior, senior year, then you kind of find your niche and what you really want to do. But I really have, I could say a lot about a coach that's opposed to their football player going into wrestling. I'm like, you don't want your football great because that's what going to make them do. They're gonna teach self-discipline, awareness, because again, certain sports like football, it goes so fast, but at the same time you have backup. Wrestling goes just as fast or maybe faster, but the difference is you can't see it.
Yeah.
If I'm attacking you, my objective is to control your hips as quick as I can without you throwing no defense at me. So that means I'm going to tap your head, move your eyes, readjust your angle, take you down without you even realizing. But a great wrestler has great defense. And so by you stopping it, that means you are aware of my quickness, you are aware of my strength, and you stopped it. So for a sport like football, that it becomes much slower to a wrestler because he can see everything that's coming along because there's 11 bodies, not just one.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I really think that the sport of wrestling, is beneficial for anybody in any sport. So
I agree with you totally.
Yeah. No, we're 100% on that one.
When we first started hearing wrestling was coming to Arkansas, that was the thing that excited me the most. Was I think, like I said, if I was a high school football coach, I would put as many players into the wrestling team as I could.
Yeah,
I would try to get them in there just to, even if they stunk at it, to get them to learn the things you're talking about. And also, I think too, in football, you got tons of individual battles going on, and it teaches them to compete individually. And that's where a lot of football players struggle sometimes. They have a hard time, because you got a bigger play going on that's happening, but you got to win your individual battle against the guy from Clinton, we were offensive linemen, the guy we were blocking. I got to win that battle before I can do anything else for my team. Right. And something like wrestling teaches you to take that battle seriously, because in the end, that's all you're doing in wrestling it's mano a mano. Like you said, reading that guy, understanding that guy. And in football is so much easier because, once you got the wrestling part down, I think you could take that and convert it so much easier.
Yeah, so definitely. It's something I kind of tell my guys all the time: don't run away from the fight. Somebody actually, in the sport of wrestling, somebody have your leg in the air. Don't try to turn away and try to kick away from it. No, fight back into it. One leg, fight into it. So you have that mentality of I'm going to fight no matter what you're doing. You twisting my arm or you squeezing my neck, trying to get me to my back, whatever the situation may be. I'm not going to run away from that. I'm going to fight back into it. Well, you transition that to football, and you got to block somebody. Well, just because he's 6'6" and you're 5'11", go to the fight. It's not about it's about the it's not the size of the dog, the size of the bite. So that mentality is embedded in you in the sport of wrestling because you guys weigh the same. It don't matter his height. You know what you have to do.
You're
going to compete. You're going to compete.
That's what
Coach Prophet, we can't thank you enough for jumping on the podcast with us. Honestly, I can sit here and talk to you about wrestling.
I know. I was going to say
another 30, 40 minutes.
But, like I told you before we got on, these are questions. This ain't just stuff we're just doing out here because we're doing a podcast, man. This is stuff I was interested in listening to you, man, and I appreciate you.
Totally. I appreciate it.
And man, I'm gonna thank you personally for myself because I work. You see me over working out with Cisco a lot, and man, it is just me from just sport of jiu-jitsu going out there training. It has completely changed my game, and it's taken something from that was a big time weakness of mine, and I ain't gonna say made it a strength, but it's another tool in my tool belt that I keep working on it and keep getting better and better at it. And I catch myself watching the Big Ten Network, watching wrestling on there,
Oh,
Man, I hate that it wasn't around when I was a kid, because Travis can tell you there was not a bigger wrestling fan, WWE style, than me. I still watch it every Monday night, but I would have been the first guy to sign up for wrestling if it came to Greenbrier.
right.
And man,
And I would have been right there with him, because there's probably no one that wrestled more in the front yard, backyard.
Right.
Now, who's that you got with you, Coach Prophet? I know you said.
This is my youngest. This is Josiah. And,
Hey, Josiah, how you doing, buddy?
All right, how's he doing on his wrestling training?
Oh man, his they both are very aggressive. They give us, and what's crazy is my wife wrestled as well.
Wow.
She's a two-time Texas State champ in high school and a 4-time collegiate All-American. So wrestling is going to be around them for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but they're very aggressive. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well, I know Cisco's their babysitter. My last question for you, then we'll get you off here. If you were having to grade Cisco on his babysitting skills, what grade would you give him?
Well, I would definitely I'll give Cisco. I'll give him an A. I
All
said
right.
my boys love him. He's like a big brother to him. My oldest. I mean, Cisco comes into the house. He don't care about mom and dad or nothing. So does a great job with these boys.
Yeah, the first time my son saw Cisco, he just ran up and just gravitated to him and sit by him at the restaurant and everything. So
Cisco's an awesome guy, man. I appreciate everything he does for me. And he's since the day I recruited him in, he's been nothing but a grade A athlete, student, and I'm so proud of the accomplishment that he had. And that's with all my athletes. I mean, that's the bigger picture for me as a coach. Is not I can have multiple national champs, individual national champs, but my greatest joy is when these guys get their degree and go on and get into their careers. So it's done. I'm extremely proud of him.
All right. Well, Coach,
Right.
thank you. We appreciate you jumping on with us. And
Coach, thanks once again, man. It's nice to
We're
meet
going to
you.
talk gibberish that you don't want any part of.
I appreciate you guys.
Have a good one.
God bless, man.
God bless you guys. Say bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, we've officially had our cutest guest, Josiah.
We can't touch
stole the
Josiah.
show. That's right.
If you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, you need to go check it out on YouTube so you can witness this cuteness, which was Josiah.
Yeah, witness all the cuteness.
And
It's on the screen right now, though.
For those of you that don't know, Cisco was a heavyweight wrestler under Coach Prophet, who I trained.
It was also an R&B artist that bleached his hair white.
No, not different.
Different
Different Cisco. Different Cisco. You're gonna get me killed.
My
So
bad.
Travis
Clint says he was working out with Cisco. That song pops in my head.
Yeah, I know. I can't help it. I know exactly. Hey, but now we've done things all backwards this week. You have
We are. We're out of
pretty cool.
We're
Holy
not in our
shnikes.
lane.
We're out of sync. I'm gonna have to get us on track here. Well, not that we're off
Where
track.
are we?
We made this call beforehand. Where am I?
we?
Where am I here? Who am I? So,
All right, our holy
Shnikes over the week.
Snikes. Go ahead, Clint. What's your holy Snikes?
Well, it is definitely this hockey player. I didn't even catch his name.
I got it right here.
Yeah, we are. No one
now
does less
listen, y'all.
research than we do.
Now listen, y'all. This is
It's tragedy. It's not funny.
Yeah,
I mean,
this
it's
one-
not fun.
we're normally big goofballs, but this one,
Yeah.
this one's definitely sad. But it's just so shocking.
Yeah, just you don't see this, but he was doing a hot tub, and firework went off, and he had a mortar actually go through his chest.
Well, it hit him in the chest and blew up. What happened was he was in the hot tub it was at his goaltender. He's a goaltender for his name is Mattis Kilvanakis, the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's who he played for. He's a goaltender. He's a young man he's 24 years old. He just got some playing time last year and had a bright future ahead of him. There was another goaltender that he was in the hot tub with. It was his best friend. They were both from Latvia, I think. and, you know, come over here to, you know, kind of, man, achieve their goals. He'd worked hard, you know, to build a career, and they were shooting off fireworks, and, you know, these high dollar, you know, you spend a lot of money, you set on fireworks, you know, I know, you know, nowadays they got these fancy stuff that we didn't have back in the day, you know, and they got these little mortar things, and one of those mortars tipped over and started shooting toward the hot tub. And I guess he stood up to get out, and it hit him in the chest, and ended up, because of something that happened, it was internal injuries. Something happened as it blew up and killed him. Man, just, that's so tragic. I mean, that's holy shnikes on the, like, what, serious.
Yeah, I mean, it just, you know, that's one of them. You know, they used to have that show on Spike, which I don't even think Spike. I think it's Paramount now. But it was different ways to die, and it was just, it's.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you
gotta
never
feel
wake
for,
up. You never wake up thinking it's gonna be your last day, but to go like that, it's crazy. It's sports related, so it kind of falls into what we cover here. But man, it is insane.
It's at his coach's house. There, I think his coach's. I think he was at a wedding celebration for his, like, after wedding for his coach's daughter or something like that. The goaltender coach, assistant coach. Man, just seriously, prayers go to that family, to those teammates, for them to have peace and comfort during this time. Because, I mean, you know, how do you respond to that, man? I mean, you see a guy that you know, teammates have a special bond, and then you throw that in there.
Yeah.
And you know, some of them are there with him and watch him face his end at 24 years old. I mean, it's never easy to watch someone face their end, but.
Well, now that I've drug us all down, Travis.
I know, no, that was sad.
All down. So I know me and you disagree on this, but so NIL is now a thing.
It is.
Arkansas's offensive line is now fully.
Yeah, we don't disagree on this.
Sponsored by Wright's Barbecue, I believe.
Yes.
Body by Barbecue.
Body by Barbecue.
Which
is supposed to be, I haven't been to Wright's, but it's supposed to be one of the best barbecue places in the country, let alone Northwest
sponsoring
Arkansas.
Lucas Coley. He is
Really?
so he's sponsored by them. I think they're probably just giving them all free barbecue now. They're paying them a free barbecue.
Probably so. Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? They gave me a free to eat at Taco John's card when I was at Arkansas Tech. My fat butt would have been there every day. I had the chicken potato burrito.
That's right.
Let me ask you a question. Should they give Reggie Bush's Heisman back?
Okay, this is a big discussion that's out there right now.
Yeah, big
In
discussion.
case you've been under a log, Reggie Bush is now made a request, since now these college students can make money. They are, you know, he got in trouble. He took around $300,000 from sports agents, that were trying to get him to sign with them as an agent. He used it, he said, to pay his parents' rent. $300,000 is rent on a pretty nice place.
Yeah.
But he says, since the rule has changed now, he wants to have his Heisman back, which my argument, first of all, is he doesn't care about the Heisman. He wants the money from being on the Heisman House commercials. And he wants to go to the Heisman Awards show and hang out with all the guys. He wants the notoriety from it, which I don't blame him there. Okay. And I don't blame him at all. But where we may disagree here, Clint, is first of all, just because the rule has changed now does not mean the rule was changed then. And he broke the rules then. By the way, what he did then would still be against the rules now, because you can't take money from an agent now. You can have an agent now to handle your your NIL stuff, but that agent's only going to make like 3% or something. And they cannot be a contract that carries over into your pro status. These were professional agents that were giving him big lump sums of money for nothing. He was doing nothing. Okay. He did nothing for them. He did no advertising for them. This was not a percentage of a deal they had made for him. This was them trying to get him to sign with them once he graduated.
Now we are talking apples and oranges here, but just because it was against the rules then, if he'd had these other avenues to make money, he wouldn't have done it. And I think when me and you were discussing this beforehand, in my opinion is any school punishment should stand. But individuals give the kids their awards back because he didn't rush for all them yards and catch all them passes and do all them Reggie Bush things because he had an agent. He did those because he was Reggie Bush.
Yeah.
Now you could definitely argue on the other side, like, well, who knows, his offensive line wasn't getting paid and he had better teammates around him. And let's not kid ourselves. Everybody cheats.
Oh yeah.
To a degree. It's not like it's the old SWC back when there were 9 teams and 7 of them were on probation.
Yeah.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
I think maybe Rice wasn't on probation, but they all cheat to a degree. And so I really think, but then you also, on the other hand, like, where do you stop? Do you give the Fab Five their records back?
Well, do you give, how many kids, and I couldn't think of any. I tried to think of some examples of this, but over the years, there's been kids that have had Heisman type years that would have been considered but for the Heisman, but have gotten, tabbed by the NCAA for something and had to sit out, or there's just been accusations. And so they ended up not getting the Heisman because of that. But, and so do you go back to them and say, well, actually so-and-so would have had a better year. Should we give it to them?
But here's the thing. Reggie Bush got awarded the trophy. They gave it to him. Like, here, you won this. You're the best player in college football. Vince Young finished second.
Yeah.
They gave it to Reggie Bush.
And he deserved it. He was the
best player in college football.
Best college football player
kind of like Darren
arguably
McFadden
that I've seen in my life.
But what?
Yeah.
So we could argue this back and forth all day, because my thing is, it was a bad rule then. It was a bad rule to not let these guys capitalize. It's like, and I used this example earlier, it's like this girl from LSU, this young lady, she's a young woman, who tested positive for marijuana, non-performance enhancing drug, was legal where she was. And now she's not going to go to the Olympics.
It may have been legal where she was, but it was still against the rules for the Olympics. Yeah. There's lots of things that you can take that are illegal, that you and I can go and take from Walmart's pharmacy that are legal right now in Arkansas. However, if I take those and I take a test to be an Olympian, there are things that are on the list that I'm not supposed to be able to take. Okay, so there's not a that's the thing with her, is that was against the Olympic rules. She knew it was against the Olympic rules. Okay. Second of all, it's kind of funny that all these athletes, say, well, weed's legal, so it should be legal for all these athletes to smoke it. And I'm fine with that. If that's the way people vote.
Yeah, to me, I'm like, do your own thing. I don't care.
Okay, but it's just funny how everyone that argues for that are athletes like the Matt Barnes and some of those NBA players that had those, those talks where they were talking about it. They're all athletes that never achieved what they could have achieved as an athlete. They all underperformed in their careers. Every one of them that argues for it ended up underperforming compared to, so I'm like, okay, hey, if y'all want to take it, go ahead. But you know, this girl, if she would have stayed away from it, she probably would have done even better. She probably would have done even better in her sport if she'd have, you know, but I understand she had some things going on or whatever, family wise or
Yeah. Now,
what have
you know what's beautiful, Travis? This is the
What's
most beautiful thing about that. There are big decisions that have to be made on a lot of this stuff, and we don't have to make them.
No, we don't.
We don't. Thank goodness. Thank goodness I'm not.
Thank the good Lord. Yeah.
I'm too much of a people pleaser. I want everybody to like me. Like,
well, and that's the thing. You know, the Reggie Bush deal. I mean, I'm like you. Part of me says, man, I like Reggie Bush. He's handled himself well since he's always handled himself well in public. He's not been an idiot, you know. I mean, he's a good guy. You know, let him do his thing. Let him, you know, keep him out there. But I just I don't know. They just I wouldn't mind seeing him keep the Heisman. I'd like to see him on those commercials. But
and you know, a decision will be made eventually. I'm for giving it back. I can see, but I mean, the thing is, when me and you talked about this, we see both sides of the coin, and that's why we wanted to have a little back and forth on it. And man, I tell you what, it was a pleasure talking to Coach Profit.
It was. I'm glad you were able to get him and had a relationship with him to get him on there. That was a good interview.
And guys, there's a lot of I know Greenbrier High School, where me and Travis graduated from. I'm brain farting on the guy's name. I've met with him. He is a volunteer coach. He does not get paid a dime. Like, they had to buy their own uniforms. He has to provide the mats. They have to roll them out.
Yeah.
These guys are doing this. When you see a wrestling school doing a fundraiser, the wrestling team doing a fundraiser, car wash, fireworks, whatever, throw them a couple bucks, because you know, a lot of these guys are doing it. I mean, Profit's obviously getting paid because he's a college coach, but there's a lot of these high school programs that aren't getting paid. They're not getting anything. So even
though Profit's getting paid, you know, there may not be, you know, probably not near as much a budget going to that as there may be others. I don't know that, you know, at CBC, but I guarantee you in the high schools, there's not. I mean, I have some friends that are coaches in Long Island, New York, and they're twin brothers who both wrestled Division I, one at Maryland, one at Virginia, and they coach at the same high school that they grew up in. And I went and saw their practice facility, and it's the basement, literally the basement of the athletic facility, and it's like got low ceilings. Of course, you don't. I guess with wrestling, you don't need very high ceilings.
Well, it's
you know, even up there where wrestling's a huge deal. I mean, they had a national champion on their team, you know, that they were coaching, that was getting a D1 football scholarship to go to Maryland, I think, at the time when I was up there, and they were low on money. So if you can support, you know, and like we talked about in the interview, you may be supporting the future of your football team if you're supporting these wrestling teams.
Right. Landon, who won state from Greenbrier, I took half that state championship because I was his training partner for most of it. But he was the starting center on Greenbrier's football team. He'll tell you wrestling helped him be a better football player.
Yeah.
And
well, Clint, man, it's always good to be on here. This, you know, we love our listeners. We love people that are watching.
We love the brand Stanza.
The brand Stanza, Hometown Roofing. Don't forget about that. If you need a roof, call Robert. If you need, you know, he can come help you out. Download our podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Listen to us there. Give some reviews. Like and share. Tell people about it. Okay, we want to get those downloads up. Help us get those downloads up. So like and share, subscribe, all those good things. We need your help there. Clint?
Thanks for listening, buddy.
But happy July 4th to you, and we're end of July, dude. It's already July.
Hey, we're going to be adults next podcast. We're going to be 18. Old enough to
That's
vote.
right. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Yeah, we're the podcast.
Can't
We're going to sign
wait.
the podcast up for the draft next week. So we'll.
I want to go buy a can of Copenhagen just for it. Just joking. I don't do that anymore.
Ooh.
Thank the good Lord.
Yeah, that's good.
That was just the high school days. All right, man. Hey, have a good week.
Thanks, everybody. We
keep it
appreciate
up.
you listening.
And peace.
Sweat, work, filthy, dirt, harvest, hurt, kingdom come. Sweat, work, filthy, dirt, harvest, hurt, kingdom come.
Listen, that's why I sweat when I work. My hands get filthy down in this dirt. Won't see no harvest till I hurt. Crying your kingdom come. Listen, I wake up in the morning, I bow my head to pray. Mama told me if I don't, ain't nothing gonna change. These prayers breaking up hard ground so I can sow the seed. Ain't afraid of no aches and pain. Lord knows I gotta follow his lead. That's why I sweat when I work. My hands get filthy down in this dirt. Won't see no harvest till I hurt. Crying your kingdom come. Oh, I sweat when I work. My hands get filthy down in this dirt. Won't see no harvest till I hurt. Crying your kingdom come. Sun beating down so hard, I can barely breathe. Hard to sing a joyful song, the words got me on my knees. Then the gentle breeze blows by, pick me up right on time. Listen, now I know the Lord is near, working right by my side. That's why I sweat when I work. My hands get filthy down in this dirt. Won't see no harvest till I hurt. Crying your kingdom come. Oh, I swear now I work. My hands get filthy down in this dirt. Won't see no harvest till I hurt. Crying your kingdom come. All right. Another day down, the work is done. I wonder what it's all worth. The pain of plowing all this ground, every bone in my body hurts. I pray, Lord, I can sleep in peace, and that should ease my mind. I know the Lord's work never stops, even in the